Welcome to another update monthly call for Jakarta EE. Today we are going to talk about Jakartifying some of the specific projects and some of the experiences Arjan and Markus had on that front. Steve will talk about the plans, the current plans for Jakarta EE 9 release. And I will give you just a quick update on what's going on with elections, even though everything's presented here. And as always, we're welcoming input from the community. Just for the recording's sake as well, to let you know, even though we see relatively low attendance on these calls when we're recording live, which is unfortunate. We're going to, I am welcoming everyone to join live, but I have to say that there was quite a bit of viewing of the recording, so that tells me that these calls are worthwhile. If you have any feedback on these calls at this point, of course, please let me know. And without any further talk on my part, Arjan, if you are ready, we can start with you. Is that okay?
All right, yes, I'm ready. On a somewhat troublesome connection, so I'm happy to have made it into the call.
Okay, great.
Yeah, some power failure here and then had to restart the router, and a horrible story, but it's working now, more or less.
Okay.
Okay.
Stories.
Yeah.
You want to share your screen or something?
No, I don't really have to share much. I can share my screen. Let me just do it anyway. Okay, at the moment I cannot share because it's still being shared, it seems.
Okay. Did you want to maybe have Markus start first? I think he's quite ready. And until you do.
Yeah, so it says here you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I'll stop sharing. That's my fault.
Okay, so let's try again. Okay, now it doesn't want to share, so maybe Markus can start first, since it's complaining here a lot about not wanting to share.
Okay.
If you can tell me where the button is for screen sharing, I will share mine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, here mine is complaining about permissions.
Okay.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I hope you see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Great, great. Okay, so you asked me to share an insight into the status of Jakartifying the specification. And well, I just want to start with the problems we have with that. We are too few people working on that. As you can see, we're two rather busy people, and that's mostly it. And there is a real lot of work to do. We have this nice checklist initiated by Iva. Thanks for that, with a lot of issues to do, and roughly 50% is done already. But the other 50% is the real work to do. So we hope that some of the people listening now like to help us with all that. It's really a lot of work. And you wouldn't believe it if you look at the current status, which is what I uploaded to you earlier. Let me search this on my disk. Just a second. I have the current status, how it looks like. This is it. It looks really nice. It looks like if it's done. It has all the nice graphics and a new font and the new titles and the new copyrights and all the table of contents. This is all great, but this is not the hard work.
Marcus, are you sharing what you're seeing? Like we see the spec to do 804.
Really?
Yeah, that's what we see on our screen.
Oh, I have to change what I share, I think. Okay, just a second.
No problem.
Just starting again. Ah, I see. I have to select a different window. Okay. Now you see the current status. So I start from the top again.
Yeah.
So here we have all the nice UI things, the logos and the fonts and all that. This is all done. That's great. But this was already done mostly before when we did the boilerplate. So we just filled in the text from Oracle into that boilerplate specification and compiled it, and it was done. So this is not the hard thing to do. The hard thing is you have to go through all that text. So you have to read it.
So I think your mic may be okay. Now it's better.
Actually, it was not mine.
Oh, okay. Maybe something on our
somebody else. So you have to go through all the text, and this is 100 pages to read and to think about, because all links have to be checked. There might be links broken. There might be links still pointing to the JCP. You also have to check the links to the other specifications we need. So we are dependent from 2 or 3 other specifications, and we have to refer to them, and their specs are not converted already. So we have to stay with the old links. So this is a step-by-step to be done when they have done one step and have something on the web, then we can change that link. And then we have to wait for the next specification, and we have to change that link, and we have to keep track of that. So this is well, you have to go through the text over and over and over again unless all the specifications are online. So here we have the intros. So if anybody is interested in the current state of this specification, we actually are working on doing a nightly build of that so people can view it. And unless this is working, you can simply pull from GitHub. So I show you how this works. So on GitHub, you can go to JaxRS API, and there is the master branch, and on the master branch there is the empty specification in the JaxRS spec folder. So there's an old status which is 23 days old, and there's pull requests. And sorry, I closed it. This was not intentional. There is one pull request in particular that is interesting, which is called 804 spec overhaul first tranche. If you pull this code, which is 8 commits currently, you simply can use Maven mvn package to compile the PDF file. So in fact, you can just use it like source code. So if you want to help with reworking on the specification, just pull this code and use mvn package, and you can start to work on it by picking one of the open issues. This is the issue tracker. Just go into issue tracker. Everything that has no name beside it is free to work on. So here's a list of stuff you can work on. And if you start working on that, just go to edit, put your name into it, and press update command. And then we know you're working on that. If you're done, just open another pull request and we will review that. And reviews is the next problem because we have a nice rule at JaxRS. Nobody must directly push to master. We always need at least 2 active reviews on every change. And we just have 1 at the moment. It would be nice if some of the people listening would also review that so that the work actually can be merged into the master branch. So this is the current status and how you can help us with finishing it. And I hope that Arjan, meanwhile, is ready to show his presentation.
Okay, yeah, so I'm a bit more ready, I hope. So the other one was in a browser and wanted a lot of permission. So let's try again to share the screen to see if...
Thanks, Markus.
Okay, share test one.
So while Arjan's getting ready, this is Kevin. I just wanted to thank Markus for the presentation on updating that spec. And I really appreciated your view on how much work it was to actually get this done, because, you know, if we look at some of the comments in the community, you know, people are asking, well, when is this going to be done? When is this going to be done? And it's like, yeah, we're always looking for help. I mean, not only for the JaxRS spec, but for several of them as we get them from Oracle, and we need to do this work. It's not just a magic overnight thing and they're out there. There's quite a bit of work that has to be done to make them usable by Jakarta. So thanks for that overview and having a separate viewpoint on how much work it is to get this ready.
Yeah, you're welcome. I need to tell that the first 50% was done in 1 day, and the second 50% I think will need weeks. And I think this is not special to JaxRS. This is with all the specifications, that the hard work is the things to come. The easy job is already done mostly.
Yep.
Okay, so do you guys see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, so the security spec, this one was a bit easier to start with for 2 reasons. The first reason is that I mainly wrote the initial text myself, so I'm quite familiar with the text. The second one is a young spec, so it's not that big yet. And the third one, it was already in ASCII-doc format, so there's not a lot of weird formatting from any conversion or what have you. So we needed to do some things, so I summarized them a little bit hastily on my laptop here, since my main computer is not working at the moment. So Guillermo, he changed a couple of terms at first. Then the second thing we did was deleting some of the original files that were there, basically the header and the license files, so these weren't needed. And the unused placeholder scope that was used for the skeleton document. So I can take a quick look at them here. So these were basically these 3 files. They could just be deleted and replaced with the Jakarta version. That was relatively easy. The second thing that we did was renaming all files to have a consistent extension. So the original files, as they were transferred, they all had the ASCII-doc extension. Jakarta was using the ADOC extension. And Actually, ADOC seems to be the preferred one to use. So I looked it up at the recommended practices, and it actually says here, move this out of the way. It says here that the ADOC is recommended. So that's what I did. We changed them to ADOC. So the next thing that we did was actually looking at the preface. As we mentioned, some of the original people working on it clarified that these things were in the past, so they were under the JCP. So the specification lead was changed to a specification lead on the JCP, expert group on the GCP, JCP, what have you. And then added the Eclipse people. So this was done next. If you go back to this, yeah, let's see if I have it. Then basically what was next is just reading through the document, seeing where things were still missing, which things will be missed. But that's essentially going to the source, which you have here. Then building it, you can just using Maven clean install. Then it will build into a PDF. You can see the PDF in your target folder in Maven. If you click on it, I hope it shows up on the screen. You get the rendered version, and it's basically a matter of reading through it. See if you miss anything, whether there's any spelling mistakes, when you change things, whether spaces are missing. So that's basically what we've been doing. And we now reached chapter 2, essentially. So there were small things like the replacement from Jakarta, from Java EE to Jakarta has missed a space somewhere. So there were like all spaces missing. So those were things that were added. A JSF thing was missed, so that was changed into Jakarta server faces. We did this somewhere. So if you can find it quickly. So that's the one here, yeah. So this still said JSF, and expression language was changed into Jakarta expression language, etc. And that's basically what we continue to do. So as I mentioned, we now reached chapter 2. There's a couple of more chapters, but not just a big spec. So we'll probably be able to go through this in just a few days, basically. But as Markus said, it's quite often a matter of time. So people have day jobs. They do this in their free time. So you don't always have that much time available for it. But yeah, that's essentially the current status of things. This should be ready in a couple of days. If I and the others work on it a couple of more hours, then it should be done essentially.
Arjan, one question.
Yeah.
From that document, I still saw it referenced CDI. Is that allowed there? If you are
yeah. So CDI is an exception. So CDI was not an Oracle term. It's not on the list of forbidden terms. We clarify it in several occasions by prepending it with Jakarta. So it's Jakarta CDI, but it's not forbidden to use CDI. It is kind of forbidden to use JSF and EL, EGB, what have you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, so the reason for that is because CDI and Bean validation were provided by Red Hat, and then the Java batch was provided by IBM, and so those we're not being picky about the names, and so that's why those can continue to be used, but the other ones have to change.
Indeed. So one more thing I wanted to show was that we updated the references as well to the other specs. So for instance, here we say authentication. So that's Jakarta authentication. And at the first usage of the term, and let's see if I can find this. Basically, we clarify it fully. Afraid it doesn't want to search for it, so I have to manually take a look. see, I hope I can find it quickly. Yes, here. So we, as a first usage of the reference to the spec, it's mentioned in full. So here it's Jakarta Servlet Specification version 4, and between square brackets Servlet 4.0. And the same goes for Jakarta Authentication. And then in the follow-up references, it's just the short term. And these link to the specification pages. So in this case, Servlet 4 links to this Jakarta Servlet 4.0 page on the Jakarta EE website. And in the same fashion, Jakarta Authentication links to Jakarta Authentication page at Jakarta EE. These links, as Markus mentioned, they have to be checked, of course. So that's some amount of work. It's not crazy much work, but you do have to check them. And similarly, there's a few internal links which you need to check as well, since they could have changed when you did the replacement for terms. But yeah, like I said, it's going quite well. It's relatively fast. It's basically just reading through the document, and whenever you see something, you change it, and then you do a pull request, and then the other guys review it, and that's basically it. Unlike JAX-RS, we don't have the hard requirement for reviews, so it's still okay to merge it in if people haven't reviewed it. And basically we operate under the assumption that if something went in that isn't quite correct, it's still source control, so people can revert it. But yeah, that's up to the project. It's not a Jakarta organization standard to have like 1 review, 2 reviews, or no reviews, or what have you. Okay, so I think that's basically it from my side.
Thanks, Arjan. Any comments or questions? Okay then. So I guess we'll move forward and talk about the Jakarta EE9 release. And for that, Arjan, if you stop sharing your screen, then
All right.
Steve will probably take it over and talk about the next release.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, clear.
Okay, so I'm going to do a bit of an update of where we are in Jakarta EE9. I've noticed Kevin's on the call, so he can jump in too if I say anything that he wants to add anything to. Just a little bit about who I am, because I'm wearing a lot of hats at Jakarta EE. I won't go through them all, but the one I'm wearing for this talk, if you like, is Jakarta EE9 Copilot, which is pending in the sense that we haven't agreed exactly who's going to lead and who's going to be the assistant for the Jakarta EE9 release. Our aim is to have, someone who leads it and someone who assists. So I've volunteered to assist by giving moral support to the lead. And that's pending. So again, this is all community. So what I'm saying is, my view of where this is, but I am in many of these committees and things. So I have a pretty broad view of where we're at the moment. So I just wanted to sort of recap, as it's a sort of community call, of where we are now. So obviously Jakarta E8 was released just in time for Code 1, and that obviously gives us full compatibility with Java E8. So the aim was to have it to be binary compatible, so that we could state that Jakarta E8 was binary compatible to Java EE8. One of the big things obviously now, as you just seen on the last 2 conversations, is the specifications are now open source. open. They are on GitHub, and they're all following an open process, which is Jakarta EE spec process. And as Arjan and Markus said, they're all willing for pull requests to assist in moving these. The other big piece of Jakarta EE8 obviously is the open source TCK license and the open source process, and the fact that we can actually see the code for the TCK. That is a huge change from where we were with Java EE8. And finally, we've got a set of compatible implementations. In Jakarta EE, you have to have an open source compatible implementation to have a specification, and that impacts Jakarta EE9 as well, which we'll see. But at the moment we have 4, so we have Eclipse Glassfish, Open Liberty, Pyara Server, and Wildfly. So now that was done, there's been a bit of a lull as everyone had, took some breathing space and went to many conferences. But now we're turning our minds to Jakarta EE9. So this is sort of my view of how I see the various releases that we've got over the next year or so. So Jakarta EE8, as I've just said, that was the compatibility release. That's the release that is sort of the same as Java EE8. Jakarta EE9 is really what we're calling a sort of tooling release, which I'll explore a bit more. Jakarta EE9 will be the namespace change. We have to move, so any API we want to evolve or change, we have to move from the JavaX namespace to the Jakarta namespace. So the focus at Jakarta EE9 will be to get that done. And the other focus will be deprecation and removal of a bunch of old APIs and specifications, which again, I'll cover a little bit later. In sort of my view, one of the goals, or one of my goals I've been pushing for in various committees, is for Jakarta EE9 to lower the barrier of entry for new players in the market. So the more things we can remove that are not really used anymore, the more things that any new person wanting to get compatibility won't have to implement. So driving things out of the platform spec and into deprecation, in my view, is a good thing. Then following Jakarta EE9, we'll obviously be focusing on Jakarta EE10, and to me this will be the first feature release. And what's in it will be determined by everybody out there in the various projects and what they want in Jakarta EE10. So if I drill down a little bit on Jakarta EE9, so as I said, I see this as a tooling release. So, and what I mean by that is the sort of steering that we're getting is that we don't add any new specifications. We don't put in place any changes that will break upward compatibility in sort of existing specifications. And that doesn't mean that we don't do any changes to APIs, although that hasn't been decided and agreed yet. But it's possible that we allow upward compatible changes and some bug fixes and clarifications, those sort of things. The other big piece is the namespace change. So the reason we're sort of saying this is a tooling release is that it will give a stable point for IDEs to sort of build tooling to do this change, the namespace change. Obviously, there's an opportunity for tools that can migrate existing applications from the JavaX namespace to the Jakarta namespace. And combined with that, it will also give vendors like Pyara and others to explore tooling for compatibility layers or within their applications, or some external tools that could take old applications and migrate them to the new namespace. Because obviously that's going to be a big pain point for people who have existing Java EE applications. And also end users will be able to test against the runtimes and tooling and use it as a Jakarta EE9 as a target for application migration, so that they know that the behavior hasn't changed, and therefore anything they see if during a move would be just due to namespace. So they haven't got compile errors due to things being removed or behaviors changing or APIs changing drastically. So it's the goal really for Jakarta EE 9 is to target it as a stable point in this transition over to the new namespace. So what is the planning that's getting done at the moment? So the steering committee has made a resolution a couple of weeks ago asking the platform team, which is the project team on the open source side that is responsible for delivering the platform specification. And that team needs to deliver a plan to the steering committee by December the 9th and for the release of Jakarta EE 9. And that plan will have to put a line in the sand of which date that we are aiming for the release of Jakarta EE 9. So the interesting thing about Jakarta EE 9, there's a lot of talk about cadence and things for Jakarta EE and whether to follow a release train model or what. But for Jakarta EE 9, the scope is fixed. There's certain specifications that we need to migrate over to the new namespace. So what we're going to have to do is essentially determine the date because the scope's fixed. So the date's going to have to move around the fixed quantum of work that we have to do. So purely on a sort of analysis point of view, how do we come up with a date? And again, we've only just started the calls about this in the platform development group. One of them was yesterday. One thing we need to do is we need to do dependency analysis, as Markus and Arjan shown just on the specification level. Specs depend on other specs. Namespace, APIs are going to depend on other APIs. So we need to look at the dependency analysis tree for this namespace change. You can't, I've already done a PR for this on concurrency, which doesn't depend on much else. So that was very easy. But obviously, if you depend on another API, you can't change your API definition until that API is changed as well. And these will all need to be staged so that you can refer to it through Maven. So we're going to have to go for a model where we take the dependency analysis, we go to each one of those specification projects, and we ask them when they can give us either a staged artifact or a final release date, so that we can then ripple up through the tree of specifications to determine when we can release Jakarta EE 9. Obviously, a major piece of work will also be the big platform TCK project. There are a few TCK projects, but that one is going to need a lot of work once all the staged artifacts are available, so that can then be converted. And there's a chicken and egg here around TCK, passing TCKs, and obviously changing our APIs. And finally, the other big thing that is required to actually do a final release of Jakarta EE 9 will be a compatible implementation that implements all the specifications and passes the full platform TCK. Alongside that, there are individual TCKs as well, so they will also each individual specification will also require a compatible implementation before they can do their final release. Saying all that, obviously we did this for Jakarta EE 8, so we have a bit of a handle on how to do this. There's a lot of chicken and egg stuff going on, so that adds to a lot of complexity, but it'll be tracked in the platform project, the progress. Also, as a final thing, we are prioritizing early delivery over any changes, so feature changes or backwardly compatible changes. So essentially, we want to pick the earliest possible date we can have in 2020. And hopefully at least first half 2020. So anything that could slow it down, we will postpone and aim to, people should prioritize speed over anything else. So digging a little bit into what we see is the content Jakarta EE 9. This is subject to vote at the platform project level and then through the steering committee and the specification committee. But first we're going to prune a number of legacy APIs, and I've got a slide of which ones are proposed for pruning The proposal was originally put out by Bill Shannon that I'm describing, and that's available on the project mailing list. So we'll also add in a couple of APIs that originally were removed from SE8, Java SE8. That would be Jakarta XML binding and Jakarta activation. Everything else remaining will be Big Bang moved from JavaX to Jakarta. We've also sort of agreed that backwards compatibility will be a runtime concern. So that's backward compatibility to applications still using the JavaX, the original JavaX namespace. Rather than imposing it at the specification level, we will leave that to the market for runtimes to support old applications running in the old namespace. Again, mainly to prevent the need for any new players going forward to have to support old applications, because if you put it in the spec, it's probably going to live there for many years. The final sort of question really is how we do SE11. Will it be the minimum, or will we support SE11 and SE8? And that again, it'll be subject to vote. And you know, I personally don't have concerns either way on that one. So what's been pruned? I won't read them all out, but essentially some of the old XML specifications, some of the old administration specifications like deployment and management, and the old EJB 2.1 and earlier work, as well as the old web services spec that isn't really used anymore. So they'll be removed. Again, we'll have a vote on that just to confirm that, but I don't think it's particularly controversial. And like I say, edit from SE8 will be XML binding and activation. So that's what would be in Jakarta 9. So from a Jakarta 10 perspective, I would see this as a feature release. And the important thing really from a Jakarta 10 perspective is we can start that work now in all the specifications, and you know, it's encouraged for projects to start doing EE10 work as well as doing the EE9 namespace migration. So this can work in parallel. I suspect that, but again, this needs to go out for conversation and review, that EE10 will follow more of a release train model, in that the date will likely to be fixed and the scope adjusted depending on when specifications are available and have updated and can do a release to meet that release train date. Beyond Jakarta 10, the cadence of when Jakarta will be released has not been decided. Personally, I would like a 2020 release of EE10, or at least getting it to a point where it's, you know, in public draft or something close to release. So we should be seeing progress on EE10 within specifications at the same time as this EE9 tooling release is likely to go out. So no one's saying, you know, hang on until EE9's gone before we do anything new.
Hey, Steve.
You sure?
Yeah, hi, this is Kevin again.
Yeah, you can.
Just the one thing, and I know I've had separate conversations with people from the from projects that are working on this and looking at beyond Jakarta EE 9, you know, like if they're looking at new feature updates. And the thing to be aware of is don't go putting new feature requests into master, because then that's going to be difficult for you to separate that out for the Jakarta EE 9 release that is required. So I've been advocating the use of branches, and that may sound like, you know, common sense, but I've had the question, so I thought I'd bring it up on this call in case anybody is listening to this and wondering how to go forward with the development.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I think for concurrency, we put the namespace release into the next major version, and then in a branch, and then we'll do the similar for, you know, the 3.0 or whatever the next for EE10 is as well.
Good.
And then merge into master when we're at various points in time, probably. yeah, I mean, each project can do their own thing, but as Kevin said, it's sensible way forward. Final slide really is just a call to action. Really, is Jakarta EE is open. It's open source, and that also means that everybody can contribute. We're looking for people to contribute. I think every project is absolutely up for more committers, more contributors. But in the first instance, the platform dev list covers the sort of platform specification. So you can join that if you want to know what's happening on the release planning and progress. There's a general community list, and then every single project and specification has their own mailing list, typically spec name -dev. Everything's on GitHub. It's all open source, as Markus and Arjan said. They're all willing to have PRs. You can raise issues, and each API has a GitHub repo. So if you want to do some namespace change work, then just go for it. I know a couple of APIs have got PRs by people who aren't currently committers, and that's it's good. It's good for everybody. So yeah. It is definitely a call to action for people to get involved and help us evolve Jakarta EE. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, any questions for Steve?
Yeah, Steve. Hi, this is Edwin.
Hi.
Hi. I, as an end user, and I want to contribute, I have a lot of specifications to look if there is some work needed. And there's the platform. Which would be the best way to look for what to do? Is it go by every specification and see if there are any issues open, or just start creating pull requests, or go through the platform to see on the board if there's something on that can be done? I feel it just fork a repository of a specification and do a pull request for the namespace change, for example. It sounds a little bit too. I feel I'm cutting edges there, if that's correct.
I mean, others can jump in, but my personal view is pick a specification that you're interested in. If the pull request hasn't been done, then feel free, to do it.
So literally go for it. Okay.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I do stuff. Go for it. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Someone doesn't merge it. But in my view, on projects that I'm involved in, just go for it. And I think you'll find people are grateful. I don't know about others who are on here who are project leads, what they'd like people to do.
Yeah, so it's basically indeed just go for it. So it's, as Steve mentioned, it's a specification probably that you should be like already involved with. So if you do a PR for specification you know nothing about, that's less likely for you to succeed. But if it's a specification that you use and you know exactly what you're doing, or you know even half of what you're doing, then just to go for it indeed.
Well, yeah, there might be always a good idea to tell people that you're working on that, so no two people doing the same job. So if you drop a note in the dev list, so everybody knows you're doing that, then everybody's hands off with that.
Yeah, or create an issue first and then like ask for some feedback. So for instance, in JSF, the work for the namespace change would be based off of 2.3, and that's in a separate branch, and the master is currently going to be trashed and then rebuilt from 2.3. So if you don't know that, you would do the PR to master, then it couldn't be accepted there, and that would mean some extra work for you. So indeed, as Markus said, is handy, it's good to first ask which branch you should do, or if not somebody else is working on it.
Yes, exactly. So I will try to find my way there. Thanks.
Any more questions or comments even?
Okay, so maybe a comment about the JDK 11 item that Steve mentioned. So we briefly discussed that before, and like one of the proposals was, and it's by no means that it's going to be accepted or final or whatever, but that's to have two subsets of the specification basically. So you would have Jakarta EE 9 for JDK 8 and Jakarta EE 9 for JDK 11, and those could potentially be two certifications. So that's something people can consider or can give feedback about. It's at this point it's just a proposal, but that might be a solution.
Thanks, Arjan. I think that's kind of opening a discussion, open-end discussion at this point, right? So hopefully we'll hear some feedback over the next little while.
Yeah, so on the one hand, if Jakarta EE 9 is just about the namespace release, you should perhaps only do the namespace. On the other hand, JDK 8 is quite old, and this is the opportunity to at least move to JDK 11. Most of the platforms are already using JDK 11 anyway. Most of the vendors I meant. So it wouldn't be a really big step, but it's something that needs to be discussed, and time is running out quickly. So.
Yeah, I think 11 will be in there. It's whether it is mandated as a minimum or whether it is supported.
Yeah, so that's the
you
question.
Support both, or you only support 11.
Yeah, so if you support it as a vendor, like we did for Piara, then you don't necessarily have to guarantee that it works or that the TCK has passed on it. And that does bring us to the next point there. The TCK would need to be updated, at least in some way, to support verifying that it works on JDK 11. So that could also mean some work, which could delay the release of Jakarta EE 9.
So maybe this is an opportunity to invite everyone to take part into the platform discussion list as well, and provide feedback and opinion. We're at the point, as Steve was saying, that the expectation is by December 9th to have the proposal on what we're doing for the Jakarta EE 9 release. So please voice your opinion.
Yeah, so it's indeed a question of what do users actually want, what do the vendors want, what do the independent people want, and of course how many resources there are available to actually do it.
Right.
So one of the things could be that initially you would go for Jakarta EE 9 specified for JDK 8, and then at a later date, so like 2-3 months after, do a JDK 11 certification.
Thanks, Arjan. Anyone else? So far, I really want to thank Steve for the presentation. I think it's really great, and we can all benefit from getting better understanding on what's in plans for the next little while, almost what we are hoping to happen in 2020. So thank you very much. What's left for me to do is just a little bit of updates on the elections that we had recently. So Arjan, thank you very much for being part of the steering committee.
Okay, you're welcome, and thanks for having me.
No, and thanks for all your work. And just a reminder to everyone else who is, you know, that we have 2 vacant spots in the marketing and brand committee. For any you know, participant members, if you are eligible, please get in touch and see how and if you can be involved. And keep in mind that next spring, late spring, we will have another yearly election. Let me see, what else can I don't think I have any particular updates at this point. If anyone else wants to remind me that I'm missing something, please let me know. I do want to invite people to let me know about the monthly email update / blog that I'm putting out there. The intention is to have additional way of engaging and informing community on what's going on. What else? We are going to rely on Java user groups going forward to help us out with spreading the word. So there is going to be more on that. And yeah, this month we will have a newsletter from Eclipse Foundation dedicated to Jakarta EE. So please have a look at that as well. And as always, give us your feedback on anything. That's pretty much everything that I have for today. So any other topics or questions from the community? I know we have a small attendance on the call, but this is going to be recorded, and I want to invite people to, you know, even when they're viewing the recording, if they have questions, comments, topics for the next meeting, do reach out and let me know how we can serve better. But from anyone on the call today, yes, if there are any topics or questions for discussion, please, this is the time.
Yeah, you know I will be in touch.
Okay. Okay, so if there are no questions and comments, then we'll just close with this. And thanks, Scott, for attending. The community folder, as always, let me just go quickly there. We have, I'm using the wrong mouse here. Okay, let's go here. So the community folder here has all the details. One of the folder, each month has its own folder. So in the month of November, we have those 2 slides, set of slides that were shared with us. And I will put the recording link here as well, or the recording itself here. So that should be available for everyone to view. And with that, I'll close the call. Thanks so much for attending, and talk to you next month.
Thanks.
Right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.